Welcome to Reshair on ESPN 730. For the next hour, your host, Chris Reshair, will bring fresh air to your financial needs. Excite, educate, and empower you to make sound financial decisions. Chris is a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender, originator license number 117266. Now, here's your host, Chris Reshair.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. If you've never listened to Reshair Radio, the show really is about, just like the theme says, exciting, educating, empowering Charlotteans to make great or sound financial decisions. You heard that in the intro. So my name is Chris Reshair. I'm your show host. We are on every Sunday morning, 10 o'clock here, ESPN 730, overlooking this beautiful city of Charlotte. And really, I work as a loan officer at Movement Mortgage. Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender here in Charlotte, NMLS license number 117266. But anyway, if you haven't ever listened before, really exciting, educating, and empower Charlotteans to make financial decisions really is about bringing in local area experts, whether it's a home inspector, whether it's a realtor, whether it's a financial planner. I'm bringing in Charlotte natives, sometimes not Charlotte natives, but people that have been in their industry for many years. They're going to bring hot topics, what's going on in our marketplace, so that you can really make those good decisions. And I am excited about today. We have another great show. So I just kind of wanted to remind you what the goal here is, and that is bringing these experts in. They're bringing great information to the table. But before we get to our show guests today and our expert contributor, I really wanted to bring up the Mortgage Matters segment. Let me tell you, since the election, while this may not affect you if you've been in a home or not, interest rates on mortgages are up almost 0.75 of a point in a number of weeks. That's one of the most rapid raising of interest rates in a short window of time that we've seen in decades. Why do I bring this up? There are a lot of people that want to buy a home. There are a lot of millennials out there still living with their parents thinking, someday I'm going to buy a home. And while rates are going up, I'm letting people know this is a factor that can impact somebody's ability to buy and how much that mortgage payment is. I ran a calculation for somebody just this last week. They said, what's the difference in the interest rate going up 1% on a $200,000 loan? And we did the math. It was about $140 more per month. So I put that Mortgage Matters segment right here at the top of the hour that rates are up. I think there's good news that rates are going up. I mean, they can't be low forever. And hopefully other areas of our lives, like our 401k and other investments and portfolios, are going to start performing better as well. So while you've got fence sitters out there, I'm really, this is a call to action to people that want to buy a home or even those that were thinking about refinancing. It's a good time to really take a serious look before maybe you lose future opportunities or even future buying power. So that's our Mortgage Matter segment for top of the hour. Rates are up. Doesn't mean you can't still buy, though. We're happy to help you out. But I'd like to jump now into introducing, we've got two special guests in the studio and an expert contributor back. So I'd first like to introduce Richard Roskind. Richard, you've been in the business 23 years. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me today.
Absolutely. So you're a realtor with Allen Tate, but really you also own your own company called Lease Evaluations, which is a property management company. And we're really going to be talking a lot about what you do with that company and maybe some strategies to help investors. You're a native Charlottean, is that right?
Yeah, born here in Charlotte. At that time, it was called Charlotte Memorial Hospital. Now it's Carolina Memorial.
And Hunter, you are Hunter Roskind. You are son of Richard, right?
That's correct.
Also a Charlotte native.
Yep, born
native,
and raised.
Charlottean native. So we've got two in the room here, folks. This is kind of, I don't know, this might be an anomaly. Have there's ever been two Charlotte natives in any building in Charlotte? I don't know.
It's a dying breed.
It's true.
Rare,
so,
rare, for sure.
But both of you guys work together as a team, and Hunter, tell me a little bit about kind of how you fit as a role on the team with your father here.
I run a lot of the day-to-day operations, handle a lot of the property management side, from repairs to running applications on tenants, making sure the properties are ready to be rented, finding properties for investors. A lot of my day-to-day thing is looking for properties for our clients. Every day I look on the MLS and see every property that hits the market.
That's cool. Now, Richard, tell me, you mentioned something about the double E. I really like that analogy in terms of what you bring to the table.
Well, I think when I go to and meet a lot of people, one of the things or the assets that I tell about is it's the double E you mentioned, is that my experience and my expertise. I got my expertise from my experience. So
there you go. Very good. Now, how did you get started in the business, Richard?
Well, I used to own a well-renowned women's clothing store in uptown Charlotte, and unfortunately, I lost the business in 1993. And subsequently, real estate was what I backed into, not realizing that it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
And the name of that store was Lucille's Vogue. Is that right?
It was.
There may be listeners out there that remember the day when that was around.
It's interesting. I met a realtor yesterday. We were showing a condo in uptown Charlotte, and she remembered shopping at my store.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. So obviously the tides turned. You got into real estate, and it's done pretty well for you. 23 years now, and we've worked together for probably a decade or more at this point now, Richard. And you just have a great following of people that you've known since you were a kid, really, and people that you went to college with and grew up with that just come back to you many, many years saying, Richard's my guy, Richard's my guy. So that's pretty cool.
I was very lucky, Chris. I didn't know that I would be that successful in real estate, not only from the community, but from my sphere of influence. They really reached out to me in the beginning of my career. The second month in the business, I did $1 million. I was the rookie of the year my first year.
That's impressive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I was never but a C+ student, so being an A was really nice.
I'm with you. I think my GPA C+.
We just had that discussion.
Yeah, we did earlier today.
good.
We were talking about that. I'm right up the same alley. So I was the biggest dummy in my class. That's what I always tell people. But all right. So just a question for you, Hunter. How did you kind of fit into getting in the industry? Because obviously you haven't been in this industry but for a few years now.
No, I came from the restaurant industry. I was there for about 15 years. But even from when I was a little kid, I always kind of loved looking at homes. And with the family being in the business for so long, it was when I was looking to make a change, get out of the restaurant industry, real estate was just the perfect fit. I loved it. It was more of a 9-to-5 job, but not really, because I wasn't stuck behind a desk every day. Every day's different. It fit my personality. I loved meeting different people every day, like working in the restaurant. So it was just a perfect fit for me.
Perfect. So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshair, and we've got Richard and Hunter Roskind here as guests on Reshair Radio this week, and we're just kind of doing the intro there. So, Richard, let me ask you this. What do you like most about being in real estate?
I think Hunter kind of touched on it, and that is that, when we meet a client, one of the things that's unusual is that the walls come down. If you walked up to someone and asked them how much they make, they'd probably turn around and walk away from you. But in our business, when they're looking for something as important to them as their home, or even an investment, people are willing to, even if they don't know you very long, to tell you, intimate things, to help you better understand what direction they want to go. And that intimacy is, to me, it's like intoxicating, to be quite honest with you. It's like you don't wear your feelings, you can wear your feelings on your sleeve, and you can really become important in someone's life and things like that. And
well, you build a deep relationship with people quickly because they're really letting you know a lot about them that you wouldn't normally do over the course of a 15-minute introductory conversation with somebody.
You're exactly right, Chris.
Perfect. So anything else to add to that, Hunter?
The industry is just great because every day is different. Just interacting with different people. There's all different kinds of people out there, and it's just not a boring job. It's exciting every day to go into work and interact and hopefully make someone's dreams come true.
Absolutely. And I have found that, there are days when you're like, oh crap, how are we going to fix this problem?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And some days I go home and go, why did I choose this industry? But most of the time we figure out how to solve those problems, and there's so many other great rewards that come along with it.
As I say, most of my job is putting out fires.
That's right. I always say to people, let me put my fire hat on. I actually had one of those little plastic fire hats in my office, so occasionally I would put that on.
Well, let me compliment you on this one, Chris, because one reason, we did have a relationship in the past when we were both with another company, But one reason that I have continued to reach out to you is that I find that when I have a difficult situation with a particular person, that not only do you have the knowledge of how to work through it, but you can think out of the box. There are a lot of challenges different buyers have, whether it's an investor that needs to put down a larger amount of money or something like that, or understand how the terms may be different. Because a lot of investors come and think that like a homeowner, that it's the same terms, and it isn't. And you've had a way of explaining that and helping them.
Well, I do appreciate that, and that also kind of goes back to the double E experience, right? So, my how was that? My expertise is because of my experience.
Exactly.
I don't know, something like that. So, well, very good. Well, Preston, let's get you introduced here before we roll to our break. We've got about a little over a minute here. So, Preston, you are what I call a repeat offender, but really a show expert contributor. Preston, he's a repeat offender. He's back every month bringing great topics to our show. Tell us a little bit about Home Inspection Carolina.
Well, Home Inspection Carolina, we service the Charlotte area, Asheville, and Raleigh. We do home inspections, termite inspections, radon, which we'll talk a little bit about later.
We'll hit
in the
on
show.
that later.
We are now able to also test for mold. We also do infrared, thermal infrared. And, we just want to inspect the houses like we were inspecting them for a family member. I mean, buying a home is usually the largest investment of someone's life. And, we just want to help protect that. I mean, they don't want to buy a house and run into a lot of unknown expenses right off the bat.
Absolutely. Well, you are obviously a very well-known figure, if you will, in Charlotte, and we always appreciate what you bring to the show. We're going to talk a little bit more about some environmental issues that can come up in the inspection process when you're thinking about buying a home or even selling a home, and we'll kind of hit that theme later on the show. But as always, welcome back. You are a valuable asset to Reshair Radio.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely.
Thank you two guys for having me.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a quick break. Again, you're listening to Reshair Radio, so please stay tuned. We're going to be talking about buying investment properties, 8 steps to success. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home, or buying a new car, or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late, and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care Team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. As you know, every week we have Reshair Radio, and we really bring in local area experts. If you didn't hear segment 1, we actually have some special guests in the studio, Richard Roskind and Hunter Roskind. They are agents, realtors or real estate agents at Allen Tate. They also own Lease Evaluations, which is a property management company. And that leads us to a great theme or topic that you guys have really brought to the table today. We talk about there's been really kind of a renewed energy around buying investment properties, particularly in Charlotte. Charlotte's been in one of the hotter markets around the country where investors want to buy properties. And we're really going to be talking about the 8 steps to success. Not only do you help people buy the properties, but you also help them with the property management piece. So let's kind of roll into our theme. And if you've got somebody, and we've got listeners out there that are thinking about, gosh, this year I'd like to invest in real estate. I already have my own primary residence. Charlotte is a good market. What's the first step in the process of being a successful investor, particularly somebody that wants to buy and hold?
Well, a lot of people that approach me, number one is that they don't want to be in the stock market. Yeah. Number two, they have because of the interest rates, particularly as you had talked about it, they can't put the money in the bank and get enough of a return, and so they're looking for better ways to direct their money. And often people look at real estate. As a matter of fact, if you look at our president, Donald Trump, he certainly has encouraged people to think that real estate is a major way to build wealth in this town.
Well, it's worked for him. We know that. So the first step really is what we call doing the needs analysis. So if somebody's interested, you would do a free consultation with them and really identify their needs. What components are a part of that needs analysis that you found kind of gets the ball rolling?
Well, a big part of it is what is the rate of return? What kind of return do they expect? And then at the same time, making sure that you can live up to their expectations. So I try to determine what their expectations are. I try to determine what kind of properties that they desire, whether they're looking for a larger cap and perhaps a lower price property, or a property that perhaps won't give them as much return cash-wise, but will appreciate. And that's another. So then within that realm, determining what risk levels they're willing to take. And
so risk level might be, hey, are you willing to take a property that may need a lot of work, right?
Exactly.
A little more risk, but maybe more reward, but who knows what's behind those walls, right, Preston? Yeah. So you're really analyzing sort of the price point, the risk level, and what their return on investment is. I don't know that our listeners really understand that you guys actually run math. Like there's formulas to determine if we buy a property this price in this area, we know what rentals typically are for this area, we know what expenses might be, and you're going to do mathematics around what that return on investment is versus somebody saying, hey, this is a great house in a great area and doesn't really know what the math is. You're going to do that kind of analysis, am I right?
Yeah, one of the things that I did early in my career is I didn't become a CCIM, which is a major designation, but I took all their courses. And within those courses, I've got a lot of their performer models to use. So if a client comes to me and we take a particular property and we make certain judgments, I'll try to evaluate what the income is. We try to express what the expenses would be. And, in some things we have to look at where that particular property is to see if it'll justify what the income is or justify what the expenses are. And through that, I can do a 5 or a 10-year analysis, and it gives the client a view of what their expectations, and then at the end of it, where do we think it'll sell? Of course, that's always, if we always knew we would, but we could take an assumption of saying that a property appreciates 2 or 3%, which is much more conservative as well, because Charlotte right now is appreciating somewhere between 5 and 6%, but that's a number that I don't believe in anymore. I just feel that you just can't always determine that will be it. So I'd rather take a more conservative approach, and that way I could manage their expectations.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Really, at the end of the day, it should be, a decision in terms of investing that where you're really looking at the numbers, and any buy strategy should have an exit strategy.
Absolutely.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I even say that with my normal clients that are not necessarily investments. I usually don't try to input my own personal taste level in a property because I know everybody has a different thing. But I do try to look out for something that what's going to be a problem if your driveway is up a hill.
Really steep.
Exactly.
Or you're right behind the airport
Exactly.
or whatever.
Because hopefully they like us, and when they decide to sell, they'll call us back to sell it.
Right.
And then I don't have to say, oh, by the way, do you remember me telling you that
Right.
being by the airport might affect?
Right. And the thing is, in a really hot market, and we've really been blessed to have a market that's been pretty hot the last few years, sometimes those properties with those negative influences will still sell okay, but if the market turns around, those end up being the homes like the first one at the entrance of the neighborhood that's got all the road traffic. They can sometimes take years to sell in a bad market, and that can be very challenging for the agent and that relationship that you've worked so hard to establish.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris.
So perfect. So step one again in the buying investment property strategy here in terms of 8 steps to success was really just doing an in-depth needs analysis that you'll do a free consultation with them. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Reshair Radio. I am your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. And we're here in the studio with Richard and Hunter Roskind talking about really 8 steps to success in buying investment properties. So step one, we've got covered. So let's talk about step number 2. I actually get a little bit more involved in this step, and that is getting pre-qualified first. Should your investor not be paying cash? Because I understand you work with a good number of investors that may end up paying cash for a house. Hallelujah for you, right?
Well, it's interesting, Chris. If you really do what's called an internal rate of return, if you actually borrow money, you get a greater rate of return.
Well, how could that be?
Well, that's called leverage. That's what it's all about. And certainly you can buy more properties when you
split your dollars.
Split your dollars. And things
Right,
like that.
right.
So, but I do have some people, again, it determine on what their risk level is. Some don't want to risk. They don't want to risk the having to make a payment. So they'd rather own the property outright. So if it's not leased, that they don't have to.
It's just less stressful for them if they have the ability to pay cash. That
and then
makes
I
sense.
have other people that are looking forward to, like we said, is that they want to leverage their money. They get a better rate of return, and
buy more properties.
And the fact that there's interest there will give them a tax advantage.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit. I'm going to jump in here because I work with investors on a regular basis. And I get those phone calls, and they assume that the investment mortgage process is the same as when they bought their home 8 years ago, right? With completely different guidelines, completely different time frame. So I just wanted to bring up some key factors that if you're thinking about buying an investment property, things that you need to know. Number one, your interest rate is going to be anywhere from 0.5 point to 0.75 point higher because Fannie Mae or people in the secondary market recognize that your renter might not take care of that home as well as you would if it was your primary residence. So rates are going to be a little bit higher. A lot of times investors don't know that the mortgage lenders are going to require you to have 6 months worth of mortgage payments for your primary residence and every subsequent property in the bank after your down payment and closing costs. We call those reserves, so that if the rental property you find them, Richard, doesn't get rented for 6 months, that you've got some cash in the bank to cover that mortgage. And that's just common sense, but people don't always think these things through. And then the other thing that I see a lot is that they say, well, my mom is going to give me some money and I want to buy an investment property. Well, if you're an investor, Fannie Mae guidelines, Freddie Mac guidelines, they don't allow your down payment to be from a gift. They want to know that that is your hard-earned money. Now, how do you get around that? If mom's going to give you a gift, put it in your account. You may have to wait 3 or 4 months, let it season. Then the lender considers those seasons funds. They're not going to want to necessarily know it came from your mom. But little things like that, you take the application, you've already found a property. They think, oh, I'm going to qualify just fine. I've got plenty of money. I've got great credit. I've got a great job. And then we hit these little walls because they weren't prepared for some of these nuances. So if you're thinking about investing, those are just a couple of quick tips to and things to consider when you're buying an investment property using a mortgage loan. But if you need to get qualified before you put an offer in, let's look at those numbers up front. Doesn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes over the phone, and it's completely free. So step number 2 in our 8 steps to success in buying an investment property, get pre-qualified. All right, so let's roll to step number 3 quickly, and that's identifying a property. Hunter, how do you guys help in people identifying properties that might fit their needs?
We get their guidelines, what they're looking for. Obviously I look at the market every day. So I have kind of a list of our investors and what they're looking for. So when something pops up, I send it over to them, or I pass it over to Richard and have him look over it. And if it's something big right away, we'll go ahead and do our report, see what kind of return we think it would get and send it over to our investor.
All right, so you're going to identify new properties and then maybe do an analysis if you think it's a good one that may fit their needs, and let them know. And Preston, you have something you will share.
I have a question. Are some people like more into cash flow and others into more capital appreciation? Is that
You're 100% right. My brother, for example, bought 2 properties. He actually lives in Phoenix. There's an area like Dilworth. It's a historic area. And he bought 2 homes there. He actually put down quite a bit of money. I think he put down 30 or 40%, which is more than was required. And his cash flow was basically, it covered the expenses that, what his rent was, what his mortgage payments were and his tax payments, but he got no money out of it. It was just zero. But he was looking for the appreciation there, where instead of looking at 3 to 5%, he was looking at an area like Dilworth, which
could get more.
Could get 10% and 10% a year or more and things like that. So his strategy was for the appreciation. He didn't need the income. Other people's strategy was maybe I need the income, but I don't. And that's why a lot of people will buy what I consider a little, properties that are under $100,000. They're looking for income, but not necessarily going to experience the appreciation.
Right. Makes sense. So, well, this is a perfect time to take a quick little break here. Again, you're listening to Reshair Radio. Stay tuned. Again, we're talking about the 8 steps to success in buying investment properties. Again, stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Chris Reshair, your host of Reshair Radio. As a mortgage professional, we interact with several industry-related professionals, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I have a choice to select a closing attorney either to purchase or do a refinance, I choose John Ringer with Hutchins Law Firm. He is a legal professional and he covers commercial and residential transactions. More than just a closing attorney, John wants to be your attorney for life. He can provide you insights you need to make accurate and informed legal decisions. As a Charlotte native, John has witnessed the tremendous growth and development of our city and region. As a part of Hutchins Law Firm with more than a quarter century of experience and 400 years of collective combined legal experience, they have what you're looking for. They have offices in Charlotte, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and Columbia, South Carolina. Please give John a call if you need an attorney, the right attorney, at 980-275-9810. That's 980-275-9810. Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. If this is the first time that you've tuned into our show, we bring in local area experts and expert contributors, and we talk about real estate, finance, mortgage, you name it. And the goal really here today is we're talking about 8 steps to success in purchasing investment properties. We've got Hunter and Richard Roskind from Allen Tate and Lease Evaluations. And we've got Preston Salen here from Home Inspection Carolina. We were talking about step number 1, 2, and 3. We were just wrapping up how to identify the right investment property to purchase and maybe some of the performance projections that you would do for a client. But let's assume our investor that's been listening says, okay, I've identified, or you've helped them identify a property that's going to help them cash flow properly. Now it's time to negotiate that offer. And what's that process look like if step number 4 is negotiating that offer?
Yeah, this is the art of the deal, as the Donald would say. It's not just the price is important, obviously, because that ultimately the numbers have to work for any investor. That's the wonderful thing about investors. They don't care if the house is painted purple or if it's got 4 bathrooms or 3 bathrooms. The numbers have to work. So, and that's what we have to make our investor comfortable with. We've got to give him a projection that we think we can legitimize so he can understand what his return is. And at the same time, we're going to explain his risk factors there. So that could be vacancy, it could be repairs, it could be the fact that we get a tenant that's not who we expect to get. It's trying to manage and stay in compliance with the terms of a lease and things like that. And then at the end of the lease, that we've determined that there are no damages and things like that.
And we're going to talk a little more about those lease components later. So really, like you said, art of the deal, negotiating the price, you're going to be balancing not just the price, but other components to make sure that, like you said, the math works for your investor.
Yes. And of course, we'll run the comps and do a CMA and see what the price should be and then what we should get for rent, and see if the numbers work in that and those factors.
Perfect. Perfect. Great. So, all right. So I think that's step number 4 in our steps to success here. Let's roll to step number 5, and that is once you've negotiated that contract, we're moving forward. They may or may not need financing. I jump in if they do, but you're going to do a home inspection next, right, to identify what are the new risk factors that come up related to repairs. And Preston, this is a great time to introduce you into the picture here in terms of the home inspection process. Is the process any different when you're doing a home inspection for someone that wants to invest in a property versus live in it as a primary?
Sure. Yes and no. Great political answer there, right? We do a lot of inspections for investors and, some of the mutual funds that we're rolling through here and buying. Primarily investors aren't really that worried about cosmetic items. They're more, the bones of the house. Is there any major structural issues? How's the structure? They want to know about the roof. They want to know the HVAC system, where it is.
What kind of life is
right,
left?
Because it's all figuring into their numbers, which you guys are talking about. And it's not to say that investors don't care. I mean, most of the investors I work with, and these guys probably have connections with crews that come in, and they have a crew that's just going to come in and fix all the cosmetic type things. So
afterwards,
right. So that's not. They're just looking for more major issues, like I said, roof, HVAC, termites, mold, structure of the house. The bones. Are the bones solid? We're not going to worry as much about the cosmetic issues. I'm not to say that they're not important, but not nearly as important it is to probably an individual buyer who's going to live there. Perfect.
Anything else you want to add, gentlemen?
Well, there are a lot of different areas that we get it run into, particularly like roofs. We've had a lot of issues with roofs with all the hail damage and things like that. So those are big things that the inspector will point out to us to let us know, because we don't necessarily see that as the agent. I'm not on the roof, I can't see it. So those are the important things that an inspector will bring to our attention.
And then you're going to take that report and go back to your investor and determine whether or not this property
is a good investment,
is it a good investment,
or do
not?
we need to go back and negotiate the price?
Right. So that's always part of the process. But I think our listener who may want to buy a property needs to understand that really is this then identifies any potentially new risks that weren't able to be seen at the beginning when you went under contract. And does it still make sense? Does this still make sense?
Well, and in some cases I've seen, it's not every case, but some investors actually, to them it's like a diamond in the rough if they can find ugly duckling, so to speak, because they know they can make it a swan. If I don't know if that's the best analogy to make it.
Well, sometimes I think really sometimes if it is really rough, then maybe we can get an even lower price because my crew's going to fix it anyway, right?
Right,
of course.
So I guess it depends on the kind of investor that you, our listener, might be, or whether you're experienced or not, and what your sort of risk tolerance is.
Sure.
Perfect. And you make a good point there. So, all right. So step number 6 is obviously having a successful closing. Our listener may or may not understand that you can't make any repairs until you own the property. You can make big plans, but you can't touch it until you become the owner of that property. Whether an investor or a primary residence, obviously you've got to close successfully, move through the mortgage process, even have it appraised. Even if you are paying cash, it's still a good idea to have it appraised, right?
Of
to
course.
make sure that home is going to comp out and that the value is truly there. Anything that you want to add to the closing process in terms of investors?
Again, the investor is looking to get started as quickly as possible, and so this is where as far as lease evaluations coming, because we get a lot of properties from other realtors. To be honest with you, we're not every property we get comes where we're their agent, and a lot of agents give it to us because that's not their business. So when we get someone that comes to us, we have a multifaceted approach towards marketing the property. I think that's one of the strongest things that we do. I don't guarantee it, but typically, as strong as this market has been, we usually rent most properties within 30 days. Of
And we're really kind of rolling to step 7, which is really just, now that you've owned the property, how are we going to market the property, get somebody in there to rent it, right?
Yeah. Well, again, as I said, we have a multifaceted approach to it. Of course, it's in the MLS. We're a premier lister with Zillow. Hunter's very involved with Craigslist. Craigslist, as you put a listing in, goes down, and then we typically. Well, Hunter, why don't you tell them what we do?
Yeah,
with
talk
that?
to us about that, man.
Craigslist, it goes down, as each person puts one in, it slowly goes down. You can only update it about every other day. So we update it 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We also, along with Zillow, there's Trillia, Hot Patch. There's probably about 15 other websites that we try to stay on top of every day. Make sure, because sometimes it's weird. You'll be on Zillow and you'll have a listing, and for some reason it'll fall off, and or they'll pull something from the MLS and it doesn't have all the correct information. Some people don't go in and actually edit the listings. We go in and we do all our own listings, and it makes a huge effect.
So that's going to get hopefully a high quality renter.
Yep.
And you're going to open up to as many people as possible by monitoring all of the different sites.
What we tend to see is in Craigslist and Zillow, people are on there by themselves looking at that. Then they call their agent. They'll look it up. We're on the MLS. They'll look it up. Then they'll go see it. But most people, their first step is they'll find it themselves before the agent does half the time.
Right. That makes sense. So, and then what would you say the trends are for investing in in terms of renting in Charlotte? I mean, at least from what I've seen, it seems like rents have been going up, but I'm not the realtor.
Rent's been going up about 3% right now.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
Even for the renewals of people that we have in houses, we've been increasing their rental rates. We had rented one guy a house in the Palisades for like $1,900 a month, and we came back and we told him to renew for the next year. It was $2,250, and he was in shock. And I understood it, but I said, my client's looking for market rents, and I said, you're still our client. Let me see if I can help you find something else. And by the time I showed him everything that was out there, he renewed his lease.
Right, because he realized he had a good deal, and unfortunately, he's going to have to pay more to keep it.
It's the same thing that people used to come all the time. What if we signed a 2 or 3 year lease? Can we get a discount rate? Those days are kind of over because when you sign a 2 or 3 year lease at the same rate, you just saved yourself from increase the next year
by year 3.
But you're not getting the discount up front.
Right.
And another thing that
Yeah.
helps us is our own synergy. The fact that we have so many properties, agents know about us. They often come to us, and ask. I've got a client that's looking for a 4-bedroom house in the Ballantyne area, and do you have it?
Do you have a rental for them?
Exactly. And then
so you network inside of the real estate community. They know because your lease evaluation company manages properties. You've got, how many properties are in your management company now? About
130.
Yeah.
Right. So you're managing 130 properties. That's a lot of properties. So
And a good probably 50-60% of our referrals are from other agents.
Right.
Because we don't poach their clients. So.
Right.
And can I say something here?
Yeah, please do.
Definitely get a management company if you're an individual investor like me. I tried to do it myself, and you can't do it. You can't do it as a part-time thing. You need to get professionals like these guys that are on top of it. That can
we actually have
serve
one client that lives next door. He bought a house for his brother. They lived next door. His brother left. He didn't want to deal with the issues that would go on, and he lived next door. and he didn't.
He saw the value of working with a management company.
He didn't want them to call him at 12 o'clock at night and come over and fix something. And
my life got so much easier when I got a management company.
Well, that's great. So
it's a lot of work. People don't realize it, but it's a lot of work.
So any listeners that have a rental property that may be dealing with those headaches, this is a great time to give a quick call to me. My number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. I will connect you with Richard and Hunter, and you can take advantage of what lease evaluations will do in terms of managing a property you already have. If you're thinking of investing, you can call me as well or text me and say I need Richard or Hunter, and we'll get you hooked up. So We are out of time for this particular segment. We'll be right back to finish up our 8 steps to success, and then we're going to roll into the environmental issues that Preston is going to want us to talk about a little bit later. So, again, you're listening to Reshair Radio. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Sports fans know that the key to winning the big game is going in prepared. Right now, houses are selling fast. So if you're in the market for a new home purchase, don't just be prepared, be Movement Mortgage prepared. Charlotte's leading mortgage lender, Chris Reshair at Movement Mortgage will tee you up with a free, fully underwritten, upfront pre-approval. Call Chris today at 704-277-4463. Go into the game prepared with Chris Reshair of Movement Mortgage.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. We are on our last segment. We have been talking with Richard and Hunter Roskind over at Lease Evaluations. They're also realtors at Allen Tate. And we're talking about 8 steps to success in buying investment properties in the Charlotte market, really ideally for the buy and hold strategy. And we're all the way down to really step 8, which is, you found the house, you've gotten qualified, you've identified the property, negotiated, done the repairs, closed on the property, and you've helped your investor find a tenant, or shared at least the strategies to do that. Now we got to put a lease in place, right? Now we're kind of signing on the dotted line again, but this is really to get those dollars coming in on that property you invested. What kind of strategies or what do you do in terms of the last step to success here in making sure that the lease is done properly?
Well, we use both the North Carolina and South Carolina bar form agreement. One of the things that we also add to it is called a maintenance addendum, which really expands the tenant's responsibilities, such as professionally cleaning the carpet at the end of their tenancies, taking care of the gutters if it's a
house, okay,
and and making sure that they do exterior maintenance, and even things with the HVAC, reminding them to change the filters at least every quarter. And going into the mold, which may have to do with Preston, is that if they see some issues with mold, that they identify it, they notify us of it, they try to clean it, and not just let it continue without any steps either done on their part or our part.
Great. It seems like you have a pretty thorough approach and a really good strategy there. Anything else you want to add to that, Hunter, with you being involved in this process?
That's just where we really come in. That's where our job takes over, making sure the property is maintained for the investor, coming by, inspecting the property as much as we can. As my dad likes to say, the sky has 1,000 eyes. So you'd be surprised if you do something you're not supposed to do, someone's probably going to call us and let us know. So that's where we come in and take care of those problems if there is any. And then when they call, just taking care of all the repairs and stuff that needs to be done.
That's an old song from either the late 50s or the early 60s. A guy's leaving town and he tells his girlfriend that the night has 1,000 eyes. So if she does anything bad, he's going to find out about it. And it's somewhat true in real estate. I mean,
neighbors
like to make sure that houses,
are maintained.
Or that there's not something strange going on, that they're not midnight callers every night or something like that, or the yard keeps getting, the grass is cut and things like that, or any number of issues. So neighbors recognize an issue there as well. And this is part of trying to make sure that the tenant's in compliance with the lease. And when they're not, that's when we reach out to them to find out what the problem is and how to resolve the problem.
Got it. Well, very good. And it's nice to know that you will handle that for anybody that wants to invest in real estate. You can help them from the buy all the way to getting the lease, executed properly and protecting that investor. So really full circle. I mean, you're covering all the bases there. So if you have any interest in investing in real estate and helping to get a renter in a property that you own, whether you own it now or if you want to use them to help you buy one, you need to text me today or give me a call and just say, I need Richard or I need Hunter or I need a free evaluation to become an investor, whatever it might be. I will connect you with their team of expertise and get you lined up because we're rolling into a new year. Now is the time to start planning what your strategies are to invest in the marketplace, and real estate has continued to be a successful way to build wealth over many, many years if you do it the right way. And I think you guys have brought that expertise here to the table today. So, well, thank you very much for sharing that and giving us that knowledge. We're going to roll over to Preston Salen from Home Inspection Carolinas, and you've brought a couple of areas that you wanted to share with our listeners here this morning. So, Preston, you had mentioned environmental issues in the real estate transaction. Why did you want to bring this topic to the table here today?
Well, it's pretty important, when we were talking about rental properties and people who are buying normal houses, there are a few environmental issues to be aware of, or potential environmental issues when purchasing a home. But I don't want to be all doom and gloom. There's usually a workaround for all of these environmental issues, but you should be aware of them. And the first one is lead. And primarily, we're usually talking about lead-based paint, and I know these guys will chime in here shortly. Lead, if it's ingested or swallowed, can cause damage to your central nervous system. In the early days of indoor plumbing, lead was used in pipes, which was very unfortunate. Also,
so you got to drink it. That's good.
Yeah, that's really bad.
You were definitely ingesting it.
Yeah, and in fact, that was one of the big, when you hear about moonshining and revenuers and stuff, way back in the day, they were making these moonshine stills and they were soldering it with lead solder, and that's when you got a bad batch of moonshine. And there's still, there's some effects of that. But you don't want to ingest lead. And the thing is, if you buy a house that was built prior to 1978, there's potential that you had lead-based paint. It's usually not going to be like your interior, like on drywall.
Wall paints and stuff,
yeah,
right.
It's more that where your oil paint would be used, like your trim, somewhere around windows and doors, that sort of thing.
Wood.
Yeah, and it's a problem if it's chipping because, if you have small children, especially if you're renting, something like that, you need to, basically you've got to get rid of all that chipping paint and seal it off. And you can't just hire anyone to do this. They have to be certified. As of 2010, professionals that do painting, if they paint anything built to 1978, they have to have a lead hazard management program certificate. And it's just something you need to be aware of. It's a problem that can be managed, though. I don't know if these guys.
Yeah, again, you're not here to scare people, but it is important for people to know about what environmental issues are related to real estate. And lead is still out there. I mean, it's still something that we need to pay attention to.
Isn't this more of a children's issue than it is an adult issue? That's what I've always heard.
For the most part, because when way back when and I have my real estate license too. I don't buy or sell, but it's a chapter in the real estate training. It was the kids that potentially could chew on the chips
Because it's sweet, right? It
right.
tastes sweet.
It does. And but
Are you sharing a secret?
That's what I was told.
But now the secondary problem comes in though when somebody is renovating. And typically you do prep on the wood. Normal paint you can sand, chip it off. You can't do this with lead. You have to seal everything off because the dust that would create it.
So even the dust is hazardous.
Exactly.
Not just the chips.
But
Okay.
normal everyday usage, you're correct. It would be more of a child issue.
Got it. Perfect. So what's another area for an environmental issue that can come up?
Asbestos. Asbestos is actually a Greek word that means unextinguishable. You cannot burn asbestos. The ancient Greeks thought it was the miracle fiber. And you see it typically on a lot of post-World War II houses. I have a couple of rental houses that have asbestos siding. They use it in a lot of products.
yeah.
But when you see that ceramic-looking tile siding, it's really asbestos. It will not burn. It has R value. I mean, other than that part about it killing you, it's a great product. But asbestos, it was used in a lot of things because of the R value and the fact that it'll last, and it doesn't have to be even painted unless you want to paint it. It was used in siding, roof tiles, ceiling tiles.
Flooring tiles.
Yep, flooring tiles. Also, where you'll see it a lot of times is if you ever go in a unfinished basement and you see the ductwork, the metal ductwork. If you see that white tape around the joints, it looks kind of like a cast. If you see an old radiator, you ever see that white? It looks like a cast, like people put on their when their arm was broke. That's more often than not asbestos. The big deal with asbestos is if it becomes friable, and that's where it becomes airborne. It has tiny, tiny little fibers that gets into your lungs, and your body cannot metabolize it. It just sticks there, and it causes a whole host of lung and respiratory issues. And there's no known like threshold of what's dangerous.
When is what? Yeah, it's just dangerous.
Correct. If your home is found to have asbestos, and they stopped using asbestos as insulation in 1978, they still use asbestos today in very controlled ways. But there's two ways to deal with it. One's expensive and one's not as expensive. If you can encapsulate it, basically you seal it off to where it cannot become friable. That's a lot more economically and pragmatic. But if it's in a situation where it can't be sealed off or is a danger to children, something like that, they're going to have to do removal, which is very costly because everything has to be sealed, space suits. I mean, it's very expensive to remove asbestos.
Got it. Well, we'll try to stay away from that one.
Right.
Since you mentioned the exterior, because I've had a number of properties that the exterior was asbestos.
Right.
Give us your thoughts about that. I mean, if someone would buy a house that had that exterior, what's your opinion?
I have 2 rental houses that have asbestos siding. As long as it's not damaged, and is openly becoming friable, I love it. I mean, as long as it's not getting out into the air, because like I said, it's very durable. It has R value. It will not burn. When you compare that to some of the other veneer sidings, I mean, I love brick, but brick's very expensive. There's a plus and minus with every type of siding. And vinyl doesn't have much of an R value. It will melt if the gas grill's near it, or if you'll see
the sun comes off someone's window.
Right. The window, usually you'll see it melting on a chimney, and it's not the chimney, it's the window beside it that it's reflecting off of. But, I know I'm digressing from your question. As long as it's not friable, I like asbestos siding because of its qualities, just as long as it's not in a situation where the fibers.
So the consumer should be okay with it if they were buying a house with asbestos.
As long as it's not friable, you're exactly correct. Yes.
Perfect. Let's roll to number 3. I want to make sure we get to all 5 of your conditions here before we run out of time on this last segment. Number 3 is radon.
Radon. Radon comes from the breakdown of uranium in the earth, down in the earth. There's certain areas that have higher or lower radon. The EPA has a map of the United States, and obviously places like Montana and the Dakotas are really high. But that doesn't mean that there's not pockets or spots in our area. We sometimes have high radon. Without testing, there's just no way to know what the radon level is.
Isn't he in like granite countertops and stuff like that?
Yeah, there was a big scare a couple of years ago that granite countertops would cause high radon. And I went out and tested.
I think it's just a very minimal amount, but it's there.
Yeah, well, it was 2 things they figured out. If it was the pink or blue granite, and if it wasn't sealed off. The granite countertops are usually sealed off. Every single granite countertop that we that we tested, and I did a controlled there in the house, and they were not elevated.
Yep.
But it's
there could be elements in there, but probably not risky.
Yeah, not risky.
Right. And I don't know too many people who use the pink
Pink granite anymore.
But radon, I recommend testing for it. And if it's the EPA has established that if it's over 4 picocuries per liter, then it's hazardous.
All right. So next one is formaldehyde. Did I say that right?
Yes. Formaldehyde is used in foam insulation and also used in a lot of bonding products for plywood, flooring. There was a big thing with a big lumber company that's, I don't want to get sued.
We're not going to name names.
But there's a big, if you Google it, you'll find it. The formaldehyde's still kind of out there. It's known to cause cancer in the breakdown of it in animals, but they haven't proven that it's caused cancer in human beings, but it does cause asthma attacks and things like that.
Got it. Perfect. Last one. This was always the fun one. Toxic mold.
Toxic mold. Mold needs 3 things to live. It needs air, food source, and moisture. We really can't do anything about the air or the food source because the food source can be dust. So the one thing that we can control is the moisture. And
Sure.
typically when we find mold, there's moisture, and a continual source of chronic moisture, and we need to figure out how to stop that. There's mold everywhere. There's mold in this building. Not all mold is toxic. In fact, the majority of the mold is not toxic.
Right.
And then people have different.
What do you think cheese is, right?
And also certain people. I mean, certain people can have a reaction in a house that other people wouldn't. There's different levels of thresholds. I mean, all you can do is test. If it's 10 square feet or less, the EPA says you're okay to clean it with bleach and water. But typically when I've seen the Stachybotrys, and you can't tell this without testing, or the toxic black mold, it's always been a very chronic source of moisture. Like the gutters were just emptying into the walls,
or behind the shower. Stuff like that, yeah.
Absolutely. But there are some opportunistic mold companies out there as well. I always recommend get it tested by a company that's not doing their remediation.
And that's why we have this panel in the show every week, because if you're not sure and you're experiencing any of these conditions, you need to give me a call and we'll connect you to the right professionals so that you aren't taken for a ride with any company, fly-by-night company. So, well, Preston, I appreciate you sharing these environmental issues. I mean, really, this is a good information in terms of what to pay attention to, whether you own a home or you're going to own a home or invest, like we talked about, investors looking at buying properties. All of these things you're going to incorporate in that home inspection process. You have a very comprehensive process that you follow. We are about out of time here, so let me just remind our listeners that if you have any interest in buying investment property,